Atlantic and right into the Caribbean Sea because of the clockwise circulation of water in the Atlantic, in the North and the South Atlantic Seas. And by the time he set sail in 1492, indeed, about 25,000 Africans lived in Spain, in that part of Iberia at that time. And so they were hired aboard ships just like any other persons looking for jobs. They were low-paying jobs, hazardous jobs, especially if you didn't know where you were going. But they did have African navigators aboard who had navigated those particular waters of the Central Atlantic. And so the first Africans to arrive in North America as settlers, of course, come as indentured servants or bondsmen or slaves. Although slavery was not officially begun in the North American colonies until 1661 in Virginia, when they stopped freeing blacks who were indentured servants, as they freed Englishmen who were indentured servants. And let me add that bondage was fairly common in that day and time, that we forget that over half of all American settlers came in bondage. They either came as African slaves or they came as European indentured servants. But most people who came to the colonies came in voluntarily.
And so there was a very, very difficult social status for African Americans as well as other people during the early part of the colonial period.
Right, bondage was fairly common, and because it was so common, there was a tremendous amount of miscegenation in colonial times. That, when I say miscegenation, that is sexual relations between persons of different colors. And there was a tremendous amount of social exchange because whether you were from Africa or Europe, you worked on the same farm, you worked for the same master. You did have an advantage if you were European of ultimately, after 11 years being freed, taught a trade and given a suit of clothes and possibly some land. For Africans, there was no hope. They could be legally held as property forever by that particular owner. But because of that, let me give an example. Mulattoes in colonial times.
Now these were mixed?
These are persons who are half European, half African ancestry. And most mulattoes had European mothers, not African mothers, because 80% of all the slaves who were brought from Africa were males. And so only 20% were females. And as a result, especially in the West Indies, but also in North America, there were no native natural mates for African slaves, so they took their mates from European indentured women and their mates from Native American, or what we call Indian. And that is why a lot of historians and others and sociologists say if you really want to know what happened to the American Indian, look at the Negro, because he was biologically absorbed into the African people who came here as slaves. And of course, most mulattoes, they will trace their ancestry to a European mother.
So, Dr. BLovett, in 1776, the colonies declared their independence from England. Right. Now, when we look at that first event, when we talk about the participation of African American soldiers during this period, when we look at that first event, exactly what were Africans doing this period? What were they involved in during this period?
Well, you know, slaves, most of them were slaves in the 13 American colonies. There were about 10% who were free persons of color, as always.
Dr. Love, we're going to have to take a break here, and we'll be back with you after this. We'll be back with you short following this. Thank you and welcome back. The topic this morning is African American soldiers, and we're talking to Dean Bobby Lovett